Hi friends, it's Mitzi and I wanted to dig into the Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie Synastry chart reading. This was the couple that you guys voted on and wanted to learn more about. So without further ado, let's look at their synastry. Beautiful couple, aren't they? So at a glance, Angelina is in blue in the center right there. And Brad is in red. So he's outside. He's the outside circle. All of those red lines are squares. And at a glance, squares dominate their chart. They have multiple inconjuncts. The inconjuncts are these green dashes. That means that these are aspects between two planets that have nothing in common because they are 150 degrees apart. They also have a few oppositions, as well as a few trines and sextiles. The squares, inconjuncts, and oppositions are all challenging aspects. The trines and sextiles are harmonious aspects, and some conjunctions can fall in the middle between harmonious and challenging, depending on the planetary energy involved. One thing that really stands out in the synastry is the effect that they have on each other's angles. Your IC, MC, AC, DC, those angles are very, very sensitive. And anytime you have someone's planets touching your angles, you really do feel impacted by that person. Brad affects Angie's ascendant. He's right here. And Angie affects Brad's descendant. That's her son. And he's right here. See, her son is right up against his descendant. And his ascendant is right up against her Neptune. They also impact each other's fourth house, which is the house of home and the house where you set up roots. All of her planets in the ninth house, her moon, her Mars, and Jupiter, fall into his fourth house of home. And all of his planets in his 11th house, so his Neptune, Juno, his part of fortune, his Dejanira, they fall into her fourth house. So they really fall into the houses of homes. He also falls into her fifth house, which is her house of entertainment, her house of children, her hobbies, Lilith, Ceres, and child. He falls right in there. He also falls into her sixth house, her house of like everyday chores and the mundane, the hard work of getting things done. His Mars, Mercury, Moon, and Venus fall into that house. So he is impacting a house where she has to deal and confront him in some way, good or bad, every day, because the sixth is your house of every day. And they both impact each other's seventh houses. Her sun, Juno, Dejanira, Mercury fall into his seventh house. And he has Saturn that falls into her seventh house. I mentioned that squares dominate their chart, but how many squares? 24 to be exact. Like I said, squares are challenging aspects to have in synastry, but they are good in that they force people to compromise, to find a way around the tension around that square. You can't be idle in a relationship with a lot of squares. It is a relationship that requires two people to continuously roll up their sleeves, show up for each other, and do the work. They have 24 aspects where they have to show up continuously and do the work. And I'm not going to get into all of these aspects and what they mean because we would be here for hours. But I will say that all of those individual aspects would cause a lot of chafing in this relationship or a relationship where these aspects are present, because the ones that I've highlighted in red are the most challenging ones. These squares can be interpreted to mean that there were issues of dominance wherever you see squares. present like that. Anything touching Pluto, you're going to show issues of dominance. Any squares that touch your moon, you're going to have ongoing emotional tension. Any squares that touch Saturn, and you're going to have an inability to agree on basics. But also, if you have squares that touch your Mercury, you're also going to have an inability to agree on basics. Any squares to your Sun, and you're going to have ego conflicts. Any squares where Uranus is present, and you're going to have urges to be rebellious towards each other. Any squares that touch Neptune, and you're going to have this urge to sweep things under the rug. And any squares where Moon and Mars are present, particularly if they're aspecting each other, you're going to have instant attraction. If Neptune and the Moon, or Neptune and Mars, if Neptune is touching something, right, you're going to have instant attraction. And if Mars and Pluto, or if Pluto are making aspect to other signs, you're going to have sexual tension. They have 17 of these aspects where there's no common ground, and they have to then actively work together to meet in the middle. The ones that I've highlighted in red are the most challenging, and you can see again quincunx to their luminaries. All these inconjuncts can be interpreted to mean whenever I see them in synastry charts, you find a couple that gets in each other's way. Lack of a fundamental understanding of each other is seen a couple of times throughout some of these placements. A lack of agreement on basic core values. The fundamental understanding of each other, agreement of basic core values, those are Saturn aspects, challenging Saturn aspects. Whenever I see this in couples feeling emotionally unsafe, that's a quincunx to your moon. So if your moon is quincunxing something, so Uranus or something like that, right? If the moon does not feel safe, there will be issues. Any inconjuncts to Mercury, you're going to struggle with communications. Any inconjuncts to your Sun, and you're going to struggle with your relationship's purpose. Any inconjunctions, again, to the moon and to Venus, right? Venus in conjunct, and you're not going to understand each other's love language. Any inconjuncts to Mars, and you're not going to understand your drive and motivation. Any inconjuncts to Chiron or Vertex, you're not going to understand each other's personal growth. And anything involving Pluto again, and Saturn and Chiron will show that your life goals could be at odds with the relationship. It's two individuals doing their own thing, but then having to, relate to each other in an intimate way. That can be really hard if you don't have the same goals. But these inconjuncts also show, because of the presence of a lot of Mars and Venus inconjuncts, that there was also deep sexual attraction that they had to negotiate. Oppositions are also very challenging, and they had oppositions too, far less, but they were present. The ones in red are the most challenging. And if you see a theme here, Saturn, any challenging aspects to Saturn in a relationship will make it binding and long lasting, but have this element of like heaviness, almost like a burdensome feeling. They have two of those negative aspects to Saturn, Moon and Mercury. And these oppositions can be interpreted to mean difficulty understanding each other's point of view. With Saturn and the Moon, difficulty expressing feelings. Again, you see disagreement over the direction of the relationship. Anything touching the Moon again, feelings of insecurity. Saturn, lack of emotional warmth. Too much Saturn, critical attitudes and judgment of each other.